Welcome into the Zoneheads podcast. I'm Brandon. He's Zach. Super Bowl 59 is set. Chiefs Eagles, just like you all wanted. We've got reactions. We've got leans. We've got overall proclamations to make. Some Liam Coen drama. He goes from Tampa to Jacksonville, staying inside of the Sunshine State. And the Magic are back on track in a big way. Welcome in if you're joining us live on Facebook or on Twitter. If not, you can always view these episodes on YouTube. Just search my name, Zach's name, or Zoneheads Media, and we'll pop right up. Wherever you download your favorite podcasts, you can find us there too on demand. And a new sponsor on the podcast. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest in a home in Central Florida, you need a realtor who not only knows the market, but has experience in protecting your investment. Meet Kevin Crager with LPT Realty. This guy is awesome. One of the top 25 producing agents in Central Florida. We give you nothing but the best here on the Zoneheads podcast. And when it comes to real estate, experience matters. Trust Kevin Crager to guide you every step of the way. Call him at 407-702-4635. I'll have the rolling scroll of that number here on the live stream in a moment. So if you didn't catch that, we'll have it there for you. It's real estate made smart. Call Kevin today. And as Zach mentioned before I hit go live, first episode of the podcast with the shelves in the background. How nice does that look? Shout out to my wife, Mallory, because it wouldn't look like this if your boy did it by himself.
I just also am very thankful for Mallory for being able to help you out, get to a place with shelves. You know, life's better with shelves because you can put stuff on them. So shout out to Mallory. And
that was was that like the new tagline for shelves? Life's better with shelves because you can put stuff on them.
That's a future sponsor of the Zoneheads podcast.
Move over, Kevin Crager. In comes IKEA. The money's flowing.
Yeah, but it looks good, man. I'm happy to see it. And what else looks good is my bank account after betting on championship weekend. The only thing I missed out was the under in the Chiefs-Bills game, and I was holding out hope there for a little bit. It was a high-scoring first half, but James Cook reaches over for that touchdown late in the third, and I was like, okay, now it's Cook's my under. But a good day, and I thought it was fun football to watch. I know a lot of people were upset with the matchup and getting the Chiefs back in there. And look, it's hard to root for Philly unless you are a diehard Eagles fan, just generally speaking. That's how we look at Philadelphia as a sports city, passionate but annoying as hell, to put it lightly. So I understand why there's angst behind it, and again, obviously my checkbook has something to do with this from a betting slate, but I enjoyed the games. I enjoyed the outcomes. And
it's great.
I love superstars, man. I root for underdogs in March. I told you I loved the idea of the Bills getting to the Super Bowl, but ultimately there's a lot of history on the table. And I like individually, just to throw him out there, I know I was just talking about the Chiefs. Like a guy like Saquon Barkley is easy to root for.
Oh, big time. And that wasn't exactly the closest game in the world, but to have a special performance like that from Saquon Barkley, and they finished with 5 or 6 rushing touchdowns in that game. I should have the box score up. You would think I would at this point. But yeah, I mean, he was dominant. He had 2 before you could even sit down and finish your beer to start the slate. And to have him in the Super Bowl is going to be awesome. The thing and we'll get into the matchup more deeply in a moment, but interesting to see how the Chiefs are able to bottle him up, because while everybody's going to be sprinting to take his overs again, even though it didn't hit this time, the number was too sky high, and they ran away with it a little bit too fast in that game for him to. You got 118, but the number was set in the 120s and even touched the 130s. The Rams in week 1 of the playoffs, not a good run defense, and he had already torched them in the regular season. And then the Commanders, that was their Achilles heel, was their run defense. Good on offense, pretty good secondary. They got roasted too. But their run defense was not good. Kansas City is a completely different ball of wax. They're one of the top 5 run defenses in the NFL. And even if I didn't share that ranking with you, I think plenty of you would have it figured out exactly how good that team is defensively. And then schematically, what Steve Spagnuolo draws up, this guy is the biggest wizard in the game as far as defensive coordinators go. He's going to have an extra layer of difficulty for Saquon Barkley when it comes to actually being productive in this game. that is going to be, to me, outside of what Mahomes is able to do, the most fascinating thing to watch on Super Bowl Sunday. But I'm glad that we get to see it, and I'm glad that Barkley's there. Second time we've seen these teams match up in the last 3 years. You don't have to like it, but I guarantee you'll be entertained by it.
Yeah, and I'm fine with it because both teams were full of superstars. You want, for a heavyweight bout, some star power, and I think you get that and then some with Philadelphia and Kansas City. I do get the idea of, exhaustion of having the same types of folks in there. But what I would say is we spent 20 years watching Tom Brady cut and dice and go through different folks. So this is just a credit to Mahomes, credit to Andy Reid and all that team around them. And
can I hit pause on that for a second? Because I feel it just like everybody else does. There's a part of you that's like, do we have to do this for – it's not the game. For me, it's the 2 weeks leading up to it. That's where I agree with public sentiment when it comes to teams like the Kansas City Chiefs. When we get to Sunday, I'm all in on watching what this team can do. I was entertained by them, and partially bank account related. I was on the Chiefs as well in that game, so I had no issue with what was going on. But when you look back at some of these dynasties, pick your favorite in our lifetime. You look back on the Chicago Bulls. Who looks back and goes, man, that Jordan thing was exhausting? It might have felt like it at the time. I don't know. I loved it. I was 10. But nobody looks back on dynasties like, oh, those Lakers teams with Shaq and Kobe. God, was that tiring? No, you look back on these and go, God, I'm so glad that as a sports fan, I got to live through that and witness that sort of greatness. I would just say to anybody out there who is overwhelmingly annoyed today, think about that in 15 years, when you look back on what the Chiefs are doing right now, you will have some appreciation for it. You'll probably have a lot of appreciation for it. So do yourself a favor, save the stress, and appreciate it in the moment. You don't have to like it, but you do have to appreciate it because what they're doing is incredible.
Well, as the great Ric Flair once said, to be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo! Listen, that's who Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs are. I'm sorry.
You want to see the champs defend the title.
Go do something about it, And I think that's the beauty of sports. We are so heavily now societally, we get, especially in the sports world, we get so upset when people bring up participation trophies and things of that nature. But then we're also going to be annoyed when we have clearly the best quarterback right now, best maybe athlete in all of pro sports, and Patrick Mahomes. And obviously there's more to it than just him, but he's greatness. He's elite. He's one of the best quarterbacks, best players, best athletes we'll ever see in the history of a lifetime, let alone in the history in general. So for me, I'm like, give me the villain, right? You don't watch Star Wars just because you want Luke to slay Vader. You want Darth to get some. You want Darth to get a little piece. Yeah. That's what we're getting.
Lean on you for that. I don't
know. That's
what
we're getting. You don't want Jar Jar Binks. You don't want the Washington Commanders. You want drama. You want superstars. And we can bitch about it. Like you said, I think that was a great point, Brandon. 2 weeks. Give me 2 weeks of just too much Taylor Swift, too much, fly Eagles fly. I don't give a damn about any of that. But come game time and that coin, and remember, the last game they played in the Super Bowl was freaking epic. So I'm pumped. I think it's going to be a fantastic matchup. And again, I give credit where it's due. I mean, I pointed this out when I worked in Jacksonville prior to coming back to Tampa Bay, and we'll talk about the Jags and Liam Coen here in a second. But, when I was in Jacksonville, I had this flip where I hated Brady for the majority of what he did in New England. And one day I was just like, you know what? I'm going to enjoy this because it's not going to last forever. Ironically, he ends up in Tampa Bay. I cover him. I come back to Tampa Bay. He wins a championship. But I'm the same way about LeBron. And listen, I'm an MJ guy, but I enjoy LeBron because he's not going to be around forever either. It's the same reason we still get geeked if Tiger even tries to get on the course for a tournament in the PGA. So for me, I'm cool with it, man. I'm going to enjoy it for what it's worth. I would have liked to see the Bills in instead. But again, there's not participation trophies. You got to Ric Flair this thing.
And you're right about the last time they played. That would be, as far as overall entertainment in a Super Bowl, just talking about the overall quality of the game and the stars involved, I think the only one that rivals it for me, if I was ranking my favorite Super Bowls, would be when the Cardinals played the Steelers. And that one didn't even have the star power that this matchup does. But that game was great. And you picture Larry Fitzgerald running down the field and James Harrison and all those big plays and Santonio Holmes in the back corner of the end zone. That game had it all. and then the Eagles and the Chiefs the first go around a couple of years ago, the second best as far as overall entertainment. And remember how great Jalen Hurts was in that game? We were having a conversation then about this guy maybe should have won Super Bowl MVP. He was so good, even though they lost the game. And Patrick Mahomes was on one leg. I remember, and I don't know where you were at, this is where I, like many people out there, developed the rule of just bet Patrick Mahomes in these games. The biggest bet I've ever made in my betting life was on the Philadelphia Eagles to win that game. I'm like, there's no way Mahomes and his ankle can hold up, and the Eagles are just a better overall team. Well, here we are, and it's going to be the exact same conversation for 2 weeks. People are going to tell you the Eagles are the better team. I think enough people have learned the lesson now that even though they say that out of one side of their mouth, they'll probably pick the Chiefs with the other side. But Mahomes is healthy, and he was not healthy the last time these two teams played in a Super Bowl. So I wouldn't be so quick to assume, if you were going to, that Jalen Hurts would outplay Patrick Mahomes like you did last time.
Yeah, and just a couple quick notes, because obviously we're going through a ton of it here. Shout out to Washington. Great season for them. Way ahead of schedule with Dan Quinn and Jaden Daniels. We'll see if they can keep Cliff Kingsbury around or if he gets poached to go be a head coach elsewhere. But he did a fantastic job back in the NFL as their offensive coordinator. I just think if you're a Washington fan, like, you have nothing to hang your head about today. You have nothing but a bright future ahead of you. But also be careful, because like I pointed out prior to the matchup, we think about Joe Burrow and those Bengals and how they were quickly on the scene. And he wasn't a rookie that year, but we thought they'd be back a bunch. And he's had injuries and it's been a struggle. So enjoy it for what it's worth. You should be excited about the future. And don't get complacent. Keep going for more. And then on the other side, if you're Buffalo, I don't know what to tell you all this offseason. It stings. My buddies that are Buffalo fans, like, they were in mourning last night. Like, I couldn't get a hold of them after the game. I feel bad. I feel bad for Buffalo fans because I don't know what else they can do, Brandon. Even though they lost some star power last offseason and still found themselves in a great predicament, I thought everything was humming. Like, I don't have much to add to Buffalo and their approach. I think the biggest mistake they made was on draft day, letting the Chiefs draft Worthy. Like, right? Like, you're looking back and you're trying to figure out maybe what was the difference. And, this offseason, and that's the thing, is we get so far ahead of ourselves when we're in the thick of it and we're getting to the crescendo. That's the Super Bowl. Saquon Barkley could have easily not been an Eagle. Xavier Worthy could have easily not been a Chief. Like, there were things, but you do the right things in the offseason and at the draft. And when it comes to this time of year where it is close games, it is the postseason, and every little thing matters, those tend to be the difference.
That's a good point about Xavier Worthy. I completely forgot about that. And that was a big topic on draft night, that the Bills even allowed that to happen. Worthy was really good. Was he the difference? I mean, he was part of it, but could I confidently say we have a different result if the Bills have Xavier Worthy? I just can't, because the Chiefs would just find someone else to do what they do every time they play against this Buffalo team. I saw CBS Sports share this graphic about just the amount of playoff misery that the Bills have had. Mind you, this graphic that I'm looking at right now leaves out the fact that they lost 4 straight Super Bowls. I mean, leaves it out. That's how there's like, we don't even need that. Don't even need that as a data set here. Let's give you the rest of it. Since 1995, they are 0-8 in the playoffs. They lost in the divisional round in 1995 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They lost in the wild card round to the Miami Dolphins in 1998. Wild card round in 99 in epic fashion to the Tennessee Titans. 2017 wild card round, they lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars. 2019, they lost to the Houston Texans. In 2020, 2021, and 2024, they lost to the Kansas City Chiefs. That has been since 1995, and it leaves out 4 straight Super Bowl losses. They have perfected postseason misery. I also feel bad for Bills fans, and I can't imagine because I'm a Dolphins fan and my team never even gets to this point. I can't imagine getting there and then losing constantly. I'm not sure which is worse.
Yeah, and again, like I wish I had some kind of sage wisdom or something I thought was smart to say. If you're Buffalo, like, good luck. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to figure out how to beat Patrick Mahomes, and it might just be a quantity versus quality thing. Just keep finding him in the playoffs, and maybe one day you'll sneak up on him while Josh Allen's still upright. So, I mean,
they're going to have to like Nancy or Tanya Harding this thing. I think that's the only way to break through. If think about it like this, if you are You're going to be the general manager of the Bills. I'll be Josh Allen. Okay. A
Yep.
little role play here. I stroll into your office. We just lost to the Chiefs for the 14th time in a row in the playoffs. And I go, hey, GM, Brandon Bean, I think is his name.
Yep.
Brandon, what do we do here? What's the one move we have to make in the offseason so that I can finally beat this MFer and make it to the Super Bowl? Give me the one. I'll go ahead and I'll sit down and I'll listen.
Josh, I got nothing. We're going to do our best. We're going to draft some guys. We'll get you a couple more weapons. We're going to do our best. We do our best every year. I mean, obviously, we tried to bring you in talent with Keon Coleman. We traded for Amari Cooper. We tried to lean more on the run game with Joe Brady as OC, giving it off to James Cook. And we got you in the mix and kept you upright this year. You were great. You didn't turn the ball over much. I wish I had more for you, Josh. It's just Patrick freaking Mahomes. My advice would be that next time we're in this position, I'll tell Andy he's got the green light to give Spags the green light. When Mahomes is running in the first quarter and sliding for a first down, light him up. Let him know we're going to take the penalty, but we're gonna be here all day. And look, okay, let me set that persona aside. Not joking, and you brought up Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Harding. Bro, I said this last night. I'm never going to advocate to hurt a player. However, when Mahomes was running and sliding, he scored 2 touchdowns with his legs. Like you mentioned, he was healthy, and we've seen him win games on one leg. But he was putting himself out there, and he was sliding smartly. I would have lit him the F up, bro. I really would have one of the times, because you're trying – you got to find a way to beat this team. And look, maybe, you can beat
Come on. We can't layer that into the strategy. All right, guys.
You can't
that's our
get
only
mean.
chance.
You can't get – no, I didn't say only chance. I mean, it was from the outside looking in, but internally you don't say only chance.
But don't you think it would take away – let's say you were to knock him out and say, I got the shot. I can take this dude out of the game. Doesn't that take away from making it to the Super Bowl? Don't you have to do it with Mahomes standing on 2 feet?
And again, I'm not saying you knock him out of the game. Like, I'm not advocating to hurt him. However, I am advocating to hit him, and he's too smart of a player to really get crunched. So, like, make him pay for it. And then he thinks twice maybe about running. Maybe he slides a little bit earlier. It's, for me, it's not, again, I'm not trying to hurt the guy. I'm not Bountygate. This isn't Sean Payton's Saints 10 years ago. What I'm saying, though, is if you want to beat the Chiefs, I mean, you've created a really good team. Your coaching staff's solid. Josh Allen's a stud. Like, again, I don't know what else to tell you, but what I would say is be meaner. Be meaner. Try to be the bully. And that might not even work either. Don't get me wrong. They might bully you back. And
well, you know what would happen? Flag City.
That's okay. Look, that's why
they didn't do it.
That's why you got to do it early on. And Brandon, look, I know obviously pre and post with the Magic, like huge NBA head. If you're mean early on in NBA games, you set the tone. You can say that for any sport, really. Like, it means something. And so for me, I thought they were being a little too nice to Patrick last night, especially early on. I do. I thought, and again, that doesn't mean that that's why they lost. I'm just saying you've done everything you can if you're Buffalo and the NFL, really. It's not working. Do something else. And I think that's where Cincinnati, the one team with Joe Burrow, who's had a little bit more success, they were mean to Mahomes. They are, Burrowhead. They talk like, not that it's worked every time, but it's the one example. Give me another example of a team in a pathway that's worked to, like, silencing the Chiefs in the postseason.
That's great. That's you just made the case for everyone out there as to why they're so great. I said, tell Josh Allen why or how you're going to improve. You shrugged your shoulders and said, let's make Patrick bleed. I mean, that's it. If that doesn't tell you, and you're not wrong, that's how good he is, and that's how good they are. It's not all Mahomes. And again, let's also mention. Can we mention Andy Reid once? 100%. Why do we always do this?
No, that's not true. I said, if you go back and check the tape, when we started talking about the greatness of the Chiefs, I mentioned Mahomes and I said Reid right after his name multiple times. It's just tough to consistently bring him up because you're not watching him on the field. But I did mention him. He is mentioned. And look, the way things are going, he might end up being I think he's more likely to be talked about as the greatest head coach of all time than Patrick Mahomes is to be as the greatest quarterback of all time, because I think it's such a mountain to go past Montana and Brady. But I think for Andy Reid, and we already have the debate about Bill Belichick, but we saw Andy have a ton of success in Philadelphia as well. And, I think even before Mahomes took over for Alex Smith, Kansas City was starting to turn it around. I think that there's more likely of a chance that we're having the greatest coach of all time debate with Andy Reid and maybe Belichick in the NFL, more so than Mahomes and Brady when it's all said and done.
I don't know if we already decided that Andy Reid was a Mount Rushmore coach, but he's got to boot some face off. There's got to be a sorry, we're scratching you off the leg. This Lombardi, Belichick, Jimmy Johnson. There's three. Who would have been
that's
the fourth?
three.
Chuck Noll, maybe someone like that.
It's tough.
It's tough before my time. But Bill Walsh. He's got a bump. Those are big time names.
Yeah.
But I think he's gonna have to replace somebody. That big mustache. Gonna have to replace somebody. All right, so let's give our early leans. We'll call them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I already do have a bet on this game. I think we are going to be on the same side, so that doesn't really take hardcore analysis to get us there because we have a similar sort of rule here. And I need to get your breakdown on Liam Coen. I need to know what's going on with this guy. But I'm going to take the Chiefs. I will end up on Kansas City by themselves. I have not bet that yet. The only bet that I have placed is Kansas City money line with the total bet down to 45, and that's at plus 165 on Hard Rock if you want to put those together. So some nice odds. Kansas City wins over 45 points. I think we're going to see another high-scoring game between these two. As good as these defenses are, they're going to have a hard time keeping each other out of the end zone. So that is my play so far, but I also don't want to be tied to a parlay going into the Super Bowl. So I will end up on Kansas City. I'm just curious to see what happens with this price, if it fluctuates at all over the next week. So I'm going to stay patient with that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, for sure. Quickly, you mentioned the last time when the Eagles and the Chiefs met in the Super Bowl, that was like a coming to Jesus moment for you in terms of like going with Mahomes moving forward. That was a lucrative night for me. It was one of the best nights I've had betting, and I had already kind of flipped that switch, but it just cemented the fact that I'm going heavy Chiefs, heavy Mahomes. I don't care. And I've been this way the whole postseason, right? You can go back to a month ago when we were talking about just the beginning of the playoffs. I will continue to heavily bet Mahomes, heavily bet and then for the Super Bowl, it's a little different. You want to have more fun with the props and stuff. Yeah. I'm betting his props. I'm definitely taking some overs as well. I think it also is going to put up some points, and that goes both ways, right? So if you think it's going to be a high scoring game, make your money on those props too. Yeah, man. Yeah. And again, we'll break it down more as we get closer, but confidently sticking to that. And again, if you do that in the entire postseason, which hopefully you have been, you're already ahead. So worst case scenario, you maybe break even or you're close to where you started before you were betting Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs this postseason. But best case scenario, you're walking out with a bag of dough thanks to Arrowhead faithful.
How about next Monday's episode of the Zoneheads podcast? That's when we tee up all of our wild bets and the philosophy on the Super Bowl, because I think there's a conversation to be had about how many more units do you put on a game of this magnitude as opposed to your average game? Because I think for a lot of people, for those that don't bet, you might bet on this one. And for those that do, you're betting a lot more on this one, and how smart or stupid that is.
And I can tell you two things. A, you bet more. B, I empty out the account. So whether that means I'm taking out, but hear me out. That means that I might be taking out some money prior to the game to like say, okay, that's what I leave with no matter what. And then I bet the rest. And I haven't always been that way, but the last few years I've started to do that just because it's so much harder to bet non-football season. And it's a long stretch. And I mean, I'll still like sprinkle an NBA. March Madness is a big one, obviously, that I get back in with. But I kind of reset the betting account for the until we're back in football season, essentially. And then I'm usually pretty negative over the course of non-football. So I'm usually refreshing again by the time August rolls around and I get my preseason bets in. Yes, I get my preseason bets. But one of the big preseason bets and conversations and just really this entire offseason will be about the Jacksonville Jaguars and Liam Coen, who is I still think it's not 100% official, right? They haven't had the graphic announced and the contract ink and all that, but Liam Coen is going to be the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars by all accounts. And it's been a wild ride, Brandon. I've had a lot of people reach out both officially and privately and trying to get me on podcasts and radio shows and just talk about Liam Coen. And it's like people are just trying to wrap their heads around it.
Oh, they have agreed to terms, by the way. The Jacksonville
Okay.
Jaguars shared the graphic.
Okay, so the graphic is up.
Yeah.
So all of that being said, it's an insane roller coaster that got us here. I really am not that surprised, though. I'm not as shocked as I think a lot of folks were, only because when he left Kentucky specifically to come to the Buccaneers last offseason, which I covered, I was very much involved with like what was happening in that process and watching it play out up close and personal. I can tell you that Stoops at Kentucky, the head coach there, was livid with Liam and essentially was like, Coen left. I don't know if he ever publicly said that. You hadn't read between the lines and heard from the background what was going on, but you could tell he felt like Liam left him high and dry, screwed him over, and just really even though Liam obviously was taking a better role, was bettering himself, the way he went about his business and the timing of it was sketchy. And for me, that seems to be a pattern with Liam jumping around from, the Rams to Kentucky, back to the Rams to Kentucky, then to the Bucs, and now this kind of the icing on top. Now, credit to him because he stepped up every time. And look, he's had success in the places he's been. He's never left because they wanted him to leave. It's always been his decision. Like he was going to be a head coach at some point in the NFL, apparently, regardless, because he, again, is good at what he does. He's an offensive mind. That being said, he's great on the football side. And on a personal level, I really enjoy talking to him, getting to know him here in Tampa Bay. But when it comes to business matters and the way he handles his, clearly he needs some help on that end because from a PR standpoint, Brandon, Liam to the Jags and how we got here has been a crap show. It's a mess.
Yeah, I mean, the story of him ignoring the Buccaneers' calls as he had agreed verbally to become the highest paid offensive coordinator in the NFL, ignoring their calls, said that his kid was sick, and then he's actually headed to Jacksonville to sign and meet with Shad Khan. It all sounds shady. And to tell the whole story, I mean, obviously I'm not there. None of us are. But Liam Cohen's wife actually tweeted out and said, no, our kid is actually sick. So she
but Liam was actually in Jacksonville. So like two things can be true, right? Like we know logistically
it's called a white lie.
We know logistically he was in Jacksonville talking to ownership, and we know that Balky was just fired, the GM, and that was kind of, which is another aspect of this. They should have fired him years ago. Byron Leftwich, the first OC of Todd Bowles and the Bucs, turned down the Jags because of Trent Baalke, the GM that's no longer there. And then we have another Bucs OC 3 years later doing the same thing. But I know his wife said that, and it's not to take away from the fact that their child was sick and that it's not personal. But she has to realize that like logistically, we know Liam was in Jacksonville. And like both things are not to say that the child wasn't sick and that wasn't a serious thing or isn't. But clearly both things are true, and it's still Liam sneaking away privately. He had time to go to Jacksonville and screw the Bucs over. So, like, don't use that as an excuse. It's never okay.
Peter Schrager had tweeted out 2 days ago, the Liam Coen story has created a Buccaneers-Jags rivalry that never existed. Fans from both sides are heated, and they're both right. Yeah, I guess I agree with the both right side. I think for the heated Bucs fans that are out there, you have to understand that at the end of the day, this is a coordinator that was offered a head coaching job, was going to take it, but said, nah, I don't really like the circumstances there. Those circumstances, Trent Baalke, changed, and then he wound up taking the job. It's really not that big of a deal. This stuff happens all the time.
Bucs fans aren't mad that he took the job, Brandon. Bucs fans are mad at how he went about his business. I'm telling you, when he was interviewing there, Bucs fans weren't trashing him. They weren't upset about it. They understood. Even last year when Dave Canales took the job in Charlotte, Bucs fans were like, we don't think he's ready. We don't think it's going to work out. But, like, good for him. Like, go do your thing, I guess. And now, not everybody, obviously. That's a blank. I don't want to make a blanket statement.
No, I know what you mean, though. The vast majority.
Yeah. So I don't think Bucs fans are mad at Liam for taking the job. I think they're mad that he agreed to the Bucs job. That you mentioned that it was a verbal thing. Like, yeah, and to the Bucs, they were like signing the contract was just, not really a big deal. Like it was a formality. And then Liam, like he clearly screwed them over. Like he did bad business in a way with them. And then again, to mix in the fact that while he was secretly flying to Jacksonville, because part of that contract was that he wouldn't meet with the Jags again. So if he had went to Jacksonville and it went awful and he was like, yeah, this still isn't for me, he would have been able to come back to Buccaneers and sign that contract, even though he had breached the deal. That's why he did it secretly. Because if it didn't go well in Jacksonville, and I'm pretty sure, I'm almost positive this information is out there. I know that I've read it. I know that it's accurate. But like Liam, literally, when he was in Jacksonville, had to do it on the down low because part of the deal with the Bucs was that he wouldn't talk to them about their head coaching gig again when they came up with the contract. So if he did go to Jack secretly, and secretly that meeting wasn't like what he wanted, he would have come back to the Bucs and signed that deal, even though he had already breached the contract.
And if you are watching this or listening to this today early on a Monday, Liam Coen is going to be introduced as the Jacksonville Jaguars head coach later on this afternoon. So curious to see what he has to say about that. If the Jacksonville media asks any questions, or if your media contingent is driving over to Jacksonville to handle the dirty work today.
They should. I mean, again, I'm Gucci. I'm good on that. But, there's people who get paid to cover this team daily. I would be surprised. And again, it's just a few-hour drive across the state. It's easily done. I think they'd really be doing themselves a disservice if they didn't get up there and ask. And honestly, though, and I know a lot of the Jacksonville media, like, I don't know if it'll be asked in a way that feels like a heated question, but it will be brought up. And yeah, I mean, we'll see. I'm sure Liam's always been really good in press conferences. And I don't mean like in dealing with us in the media in a way where he's just able to, like, he's just transparent. He's been honest. He's been able to explain himself well. This situation's a little interesting, though, because if he approaches this press conference and explaining himself the way he's handled all the other press conferences we had with him as a Buccaneers OC, I think it's going to do him some harm. So he's got to get some PR training. That Jag staff behind the scenes has to be able to help him out here and make sure he knows how to answer these questions because they're going to be asked.
All right, let's wrap this. I just want to get this off of my chest. I feel very relieved with what I have seen most recently with the Orlando Magic, a 121-113 win over the Detroit Pistons. They had lost 5 games in a row. This team fell completely flat. I was starting to get a little bit concerned, not to the point where it was an on-air topic yet, but just a little tickle in the back of my mind. Hey, since Paolo's been back, this team hasn't started winning yet. What's going on there? And that changed in a big way. The Pistons have been hot this year. They had won 4 games on the road. And they went into Orlando with all the momentum. Paolo drops 32. Franz drops 32. Franz scored 25 of his 32 in the fourth quarter. Jalen Suggs was back. He wound up getting knocked out of the game with an injury. Hopefully he's okay. And now the Magic head down to Miami to take on the drama-filled Heat. And I'm feeling good once again, Zach. The vibes have been restored.
Good. I'm not surprised by that, right? Like, we knew the tide was going to turn back. And, really it's about this team figuring things out here as we get into the second half and stretch of the season in a way where we believe that they can score enough points to compete with the best in the East and make some noise this postseason.
That'll do it for us this week on the Zoneheads podcast presented by Kevin Crager with LPT Realty. When it comes to real estate, experience matters. Trust Kevin to guide you every step of the way. Give him a call, 407-702-4635. You can check out our website, zoneheadsmedia.com, or you can check out this podcast wherever you download your favorites, also on YouTube. We'll be back next week, another episode, and I think, Zach, we're going to go full Super Bowl focus unless something else pops off. We'll definitely give you our favorite props and just the mentality that we have going into a game of that magnitude. I look forward to it.
Can't wait, man. Super Bowl Sunday is closer than it's ever been.
Chat soon, Zoneheads.